In this section, we'll talk about Heidegger. He's a 20th century German philosopher. What's valuable about Heidegger is he illuminated this whole idea of being in the world. He shows us that this idea of this separate individual self, disconnected from the world, is really an illusion. He tells us there's no being, there's no world, there's only being in the world. They go together. He shows us that meaning is created by shared practices, shared understanding of what is and what isn't, and what's valuable and what's not valuable, and so forth. This is a cultural immersion that we're all in. We're all enculturated into an understanding of being. There's not just one understanding of being. There's not just one way of being. There's many possibilities of being. It depends what shared practices you're immersed in. For example, if you look back in history and you think of the ideal of being a hero, could you be a hero in ancient Greece? Yeah, absolutely, because they had the practices and the understanding of being that illuminated the possibility of being a hero. Could you be a hero in medieval Europe? Well, kind of. I suppose knights were sort of heroes, but it wasn't exactly the same thing, because by the time of medieval Europe, you had the Judeo-Christian understanding of being very prominent, and this involved charity and kindness, not just valor and martial valor. Could you be a saint in medieval Europe? Yes, you could. What did that look like? Well, generally a saint was somebody who would humble themselves, and they would give up all material success, all material comfort. They would devote their lives to helping others. Could you be a saint in ancient Greece? Well, not really. They didn't even have the idea of saint. And if you did the same things that a saint did in ancient Greece, most people probably wouldn't think you were somebody to admire. They would probably look down on you as some kind of degenerate beggar on the street, someone who didn't have their life together. So that's a good example of being in the world. Different possibilities of being occur depending on what world you're immersed in. This is powerful for people because you see that the practices and the understandings that your culture takes for granted are not the only ways to see things. And so if you live in a culture which says that slavery is acceptable, if you understand Heidegger, you can look at that and say, well, okay, that's what this culture says, and maybe it has many years of history to it. Nevertheless, it's not the truth. It's just the current cultural practices. I can create a new possibility. I don't have to be stuck by that past pattern. Or if you live in a culture which says women don't have the right to vote, or women shouldn't have an independent life, women shouldn't be powerful, women shouldn't be in positions of power, you can say, well, that's what my culture says, that's what the world around me says, but it's not the absolute truth, so I don't have to be stuck with that. The other interesting thing I like about Heidegger is he had this anti-technology stance. He had a sophisticated version of it. In our modern life, we all wonder about this now with the internet and artificial intelligence and just the prominence of technology invading our lives. Heidegger said the technological devices are not necessarily the problem. The problem is the understanding of being that goes along with that. He was worried that we're perceiving everything in the world as a resource, as just something to use, and it has no other value other than that we can use it. he was very worried that eventually we'd get to a place where we would even see other people as mere resources. And in fact, nothing would be left. There would be nothing sacred, nothing really valuable. It's only just resources to use and exploit. And he said, look, we can change this, but we're gonna have to shift how we see the world. We're gonna have to get out of this come from that we're the masters of the world and we're here to just use everything. He's saying we need to calm down. We need to create some space for just valuing something because it exists.